Hey Lexi, hey Celise, hey Tara.
Bye-bye.
All right, how's everybody doing? So it's
Doing good.
just about 5:30. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Can everybody hear
Can't
me?
hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Raise your hand if you can hear me.
My bad.
Cool.
My
All
volume
right,
was
thank
just
you.
turned down.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So today we're gonna be talking about chapter 6. And give me a second. I'm just gonna go ahead and share my screen here. Where is it? All right. All right, so chapter 6 deals with general anatomy and physiology. So some of the things that we're going to be talking about is some of the general anatomy of the body, including the head, neck, and the appendicular, axial skeleton systems, as well as the appendicular skeleton systems, and we'll talk about the differences between those and some other physiological things with dental assisting. So the body is divided into systems, planes, and cavities, basic units that give the common references and terms for studying and communicating information about the human body. Anatomy is a study of the structures of the body, and physiology is a study of the body's functions. And there are in the human body, basically made up of body systems. Each consists of specific organs that serve specific purposes. And there are 11 body systems, the skeletal, the muscular, the nervous. We have the endocrine and reproductive systems, the circulatory systems, the digestive, respiratory, lymphatic, immune, and integumentary. Each system has its own specific organs and specific purposes. So the body is divided into three primary planes. The sagittal plane divides the body into left and right halves. So the sagittal plane goes right down the middle, and we have the left and the right half of your body. If the sagittal plane, um, if the sagittal plane divides the body into equal left and right halves, then it is referred to as the mid sagittal plane. So we can have the body, we can cut the line in different parts of the body, but if we do it right in the center, that's known as the mid sagittal plane. Um, Front and back sections are divided by the front plane, and the front section is called the ventral or anterior, and the back section is referred to as the dorsal or posterior. And the transverse plane divides the body into upper and lower sections, and it's called the horizontal plane. So that would be as if you cut the body in half this way instead of this way. So transverse plane is this way. All right, just a quick check. So the surface of a tooth that faces the median line is referred to as we all probably know, the mesial surface. So that's the midline here, and anything closest to the midline is going in the mesial direction that way. And body cavities are spaces or areas where various structures and organs are found and divided into two sections. So we have the dorsal cavity and the ventral cavity. And the dorsal cavity contains the spinal cord, which houses the spinal cord, and the cranial cavity, which contains the brain. The anterior portion of the body is called the ventral cavity and contains three main parts. We have the thoracic cavity, the abdominal cavity, and the three pelvic cavities. In the pelvic cavity. The thoracic cavity is referred to as the chest cavity and holds the lungs and the heart. The abdominal cavity is divided into upper section, which is the digestive tract and the supporting organs. And the lower section is called the pelvic cavity. And the pelvic cavity contains the urinary bladder, the rectum, and reproductive organs. The cell is the basic unit of systems and the smallest functioning unit of the body. Specialized groups of cells form tissues, which group together to form an organ. Organs that are grouped together form a system, and all the systems functioning together create a harmony in the body known as homeostasis. And homeostasis is when everything kind of works together. That's when your body tries to maintain the temperature of 98.6. It tries to maintain 100% oxygen in your blood. And all these body systems that happen that try to maintain the body together is all called homeostasis. Okay, the cell is broken up into several components. The nucleus is the middle of the cell, and that controls the body. The whole cell is basically the brain of the cell.
Sorry, man, I can't hear you.
And the cytoplasm is all the liquid that's around. You can't really see it. It's a clear liquid, and it's kind of what all the organelles inside of the cell are floating in. Okay, that's the cytoplasm. The chromosomes are found within the nucleus, and the chromosomes are packed. There's millions of tiny little chromosomes that are packed inside the nucleus, which is the center of that cell, which is the blue part. And that's what contain all of the DNA. And the skeletal system serves many functions in the body. First, it provides support for the body's framework and creates the body's shape. It aids in the movement by serving as an attachment site for muscles, and it also provides protections for vital organs such as the lungs and the heart. When we're talking about the chest cavity, the ribs, right, are kind of form a cage in your chest that forms or protects the heart and the lungs. It also plays a role in the manufacture of red blood cells and serves as a storage area for minerals such as calcium. So there's a bone marrow that's inside the skeletal system is actually where a lot of the red blood cells are created. And the skeleton is divided into two main sections. The axial skeleton is the framework, which includes the head or the trunk of the body, and makes the bones and the cranium, the spinal cord, the face, the ribs, and the sternum. So that's anything talking about the axial skeleton is basically everything that the rest of your body is connected to. So we have your head, goes back down to your spinal cord, the chest cavity, the ribs, those are all axial, part of the axial skeleton. The appendicular skeleton includes the bones of the upper and lower extremities, such as the arms, the legs, the shoulders, and the hips. So the appendicular skeleton is connected to the axial skeleton. So you can think of the axial skeleton like a hub for what all the rest of the body parts are connected to. And in the body, or the adult body, there are 206 bones. Children actually have 270 bones. Kind of a cool fact. Let me see. So the composition of bones Bones are composed of connective tissue called osseous tissue. Anytime we think of or we talk about osseous, or especially when we talk about surgical specialties, that there's that word osseous in there, we're talking about bone. Deposits of minerals, salts, along with other organic materials such as cells, blood vessels, and cartilage comprise the bone or make up the bone, which is surprisingly about 20% water. And here is several types of the bone. When we talk about cancellous bone, this is the bone that consists of interconnecting meshwork of bone called trabeculae. And it's found on the ends of the long bones and the middle of any of the other bones. Trabeculae, you can see it sort of makes up that spongy looking bone on the top of this figure. This is an appendicular bone, probably from the leg. The tips of those bones have cancellous bone, and you can see it sort of looks like sponge-like, like a sponge-like pattern. And those sponge-like patterns are called trabeculae. Red bone marrow fills the inside spaces of cancellous bone. So inside the trabeculae are where red blood cells are stored. Cartilage is found where the bones join, and they provide cushion for the bones that kind of articulate with one another so that there's not bone on bone. And compact bone is a strong and hard section that forms the main shaft or the long bones and the outer layers of the other bones. Compact bone is made from osteoclast cells, which makes it hard. And the main shaft of the long bones and the other on the outer layer is made up of a tough layer of fibrous tissue called the periosteum. So that is sort of like the outer portion of the bone. On that figure there, you can see on the bottom is the periosteum is the outer layer, which is a very tough part of the bone. Joints are areas where two or more bones meet to form a junction. So when two bones come together, such as like the wrist and for the hand and the forearm, that is a joint where two bones come together. Joints or articulations are usually composed of fibrous connective tissue called cartilage. Fibrous joints are immovable and fixed, such as the sutures in the skull, which are immovable. So in the skull, there's several different bones that kind of connected. They almost look like borders of countries. And those are the type of sutures or fibrous sutures that do not move. Cartilaginous joints are slightly movable joints. And these are joints like between the bones of the vertebrae. So we have our vertebrae or our backbone. They have several different bones, and in between we have different cartilaginous joints where it kind of moves a little bit, but not in the sense of how our arm can move back and forth. Synovial joints move more freely, and that's sort of like what your elbow joint is. That's a synovial joint. These are the types of synovial joints are like ball and socket joints, like on your arm or on your hip. Hinge type of joints, pivot joints, gliding, saddle, and condyloid joints. So condyloid is your jaw. That's the type of joint that your jaw is, condyloid. There are many conditions that commonly affect the skeletal systems. Aging, wear and tear, such as osteomyelitis or osteoporosis, can have negative effects on the skeletal system. And the most common significance to the dental assistants are cleft palates, which is the failure of the palate to form and join correctly. So if we remember the palate, we have two joints that kind of suture together in the roof of our mouth. When those joints fail to come together, we have what's called a cleft palate, where that person's palate is basically open. Temporomandibular joint disorder is a degeneration of a joint where the mandible articulates with the temporal bone. So that's this kind of joint back here. So when you open and close your jaw, there's that cartilage that's around there. And sometimes that cartilage can break down and we get popping and clicking in the jaw that Some people refer to as TMJ, and it's actual TMJ disorder. All right, so what is the skeletal anatomy of a particular importance in dentistry? Of course, the answers are right up there, unfortunately. So that's the cranial and facial bones, and that includes the upper and lower jaw, which is the maxilla and mandible. All right, so functions of the muscular system. So the muscular system makes up about 30 to 40% of the body's total weight. And the muscles contract and relax to create the movements of all parts of the body, both internally and externally. And internal muscles move food and create respiration and also keep the heart beating. And then muscles also produce body heat. So the more you move your muscle, of course, we all know anytime we're walking around or moving around, the more we move, the more we heat up. Sort of like when we go to the gym, the more we work out, the more we move our body. People sweat a lot to make sure that their bodies don't overheat. So there are 3 types of muscle tissues. We have striated, cardiac, and smooth muscle. Striated muscles they make up the long, thin cells that have stripes and bands across them. So when we think of muscles, or if you think of like the bicep, it's sort of like a rubber band, and the rubber band has think of a rubber band, and it's you stretch out a rubber band. The more you stretch it, the thinner it becomes, and it's sort of like an oval type of or long type of shape, and that's what we call striated muscles. And they are referred to as skeletal muscles, and they bunch together and attach to the skeleton. And striated muscles have the larger amount of muscle tissue and function to provide external body movement, such as moving the arms and legs and shoulders. Striated muscles are under voluntary control, which means that we control them consciously, and are the only group of muscles that an individual has conscious control over, and hence referred to as voluntary muscles. Cardiac muscles are similar in appearance to striated muscle, but are involuntary muscles that are found only in the heart. And the muscle cells are chain-like in appearance and receive about 75 stimuli per minute. These muscles serve to keep the heart beating in an even rhythm. Cardiac muscles, smooth muscles are non-striated, so that means they're involuntary, and those are found in internal organs. These include not only internal organs, but blood vessels, the skin, and certain glands. Smooth muscles are controlled by the autonomic nervous system, which is the type of nervous system that works when we don't have any conscious control over them. So that kind of does it on its own. Autonomic, you can kind of think of automatic, sort of does work on its own. So each muscle is made up of cells in various shapes and sizes depending on other functions. Cells group together to make up fibers, and these fibers group together to make up fibrous sheets of connective tissue called fascia. And each fiber can support 1,000 times its own weight. Muscles also have to have excitability or irritability. This gives the muscle the ability to respond to stimuli. It also has to have extensibility, which gives the muscle the capacity to stretch. And the muscle tone means the tension of the muscular system. So skeletal muscles attach to the bone in several different ways. And it attaches to them directly to the periosteum of the bone, or through specialized connective tissues that extend beyond the muscle. These type of connective tissues are tendons, aponeurosis, and ligaments. And tendons attach in the form of a cord and attach the muscle to the bone. So that's sort of that in-between type of tissue. And aponeurosis is a broad flattened extension that attaches muscle to bone and muscle to muscle. And ligaments are bands of fibrous tissue that connect or support two or more bones. So muscles contract and relax to provide movement and function in antagonistic pairs, which means that when one whole set of muscles contracts, it corresponds and sets, its corresponding set relaxes. So for example, if you have, when we're talking about your arm, when you move your arm this way, the bicep contracts and the tricep relaxes. When I move my arm this way, it's the tricep that contracts and the bicep relaxes. So that's when we talk about antagonistic pairs. That's how two different parts of whatever leg, arm, whatever you're moving has two different types of pairs that work together. Energy in the form of oxygen and glucose, known as glycogen, is what is necessary for muscles to work. When not enough oxygen is supplied to break down the glycogen properly, a buildup of lactic acid occurs, which can cause soreness and irritability to the muscles. Certain conditions and diseases with muscular system include strains, sprains, cramps, inflammation, and sometimes more serious injuries and diseases occur. A spasm is a sudden involuntary muscle contraction. Atrophy refers to the deterioration of muscle when they aren't used sufficiently. Fibromyalgia is a chronic pain in the muscles and soft tissues surrounding the joints. The congenital disorder characterized by progressive degradation or degeneration of the skeletal muscles is called muscular dystrophy. And myasthenia gravis is an autoimmune disorder that leaves muscles weak and fatigued. That is basically when the body starts attacking muscle tissue. All right, so quick dental check. Which muscles are of significance to the dental assistants personally when they're on the job? So when we're working with patients, what muscle tissues that can kind of wear out based on how we're sitting in the chairs? Anybody like to chime in?
Thinking, but I have no clue, Mike.
Let's see. Lexi, are you there?
What about your back Yeah, sorry, I muscles? was trying to.
Hello,
Get into-
anybody? Okay, let's call on someone else. Celise, are you there? Hold on, guys. I need some participation here.
Oh, my bad. I'm just looking at the book. Give me a sec.
Hello?
Can you hear me, Mike?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I don't know what's going on.
Jose says he's looking in his book right now.
Okay.
I'm also trying to take a look as well.
So the answer is in the book, but if you kind of just think about whenever we're sitting in the chair, in the dental chair, we're hunched over our patients.
Your back and like your arm muscles. I don't know, your back.
Lower back is one of them, right?
And I would say your arms because you're reaching over to hand instruments, picking up stuff, and probably like your muscles and stuff like that. No?
Yeah, that's another one. But what else? When we're looking in someone's mouth and we kind of have our
Your neck.
Your neck, yes. So it's muscles of the lower back and neck that are of most significance to us personally when we're on the job. So for those reasons, we want to make sure that we're stretching, we're getting up and moving our heads and our backs around, because you can mess up your neck and your back pretty good when you're on this type of job. All right, let's move on. So the nervous system functions to transmit stimuli from outside and inside the body, with the ability to respond and transmit stimuli in order to retain unity and harmony in the body. So it serves as the body's communication system, and it's able to. So it's sort of like, think of like telephone wires or electrical wires. Not only does it communicate, but it sends power through to tell our bodies or tell our nerves or muscles actually to move back and forth. Also creates sensation, which is how we can sense stimuli. So the brain, spinal cord, and nerve cells are the three sections of the nervous system. The nervous system, or CNS, contains the brain and the spinal cord. The brain receives, interprets, and processes information, and the spinal cord transmits stimuli from the body to the brain, and vice versa. The nerve cells carry messages to the muscles and organs within the body, and all of these nerves outside the CNS make up the peripheral nervous system. So basically, we have our brains and our spinal cord that are the CNS, or the central nervous system, and the peripheral nervous system is everything else. The autonomic nervous system, or the ANS, is a specialized group of nerves that functions automatically. So these are things that control our breathing, the pumping of our heart, and things like our digestive tract. The main part of the nervous system is called the spinal cord, and it is a center for reflex. So this means involuntary responses, and it transmits stimuli from the body to the brain. Reflexes occur when a stimuli is not, or when a stimuli is sent through a neuron within the spinal cord, and the response is sent via motor neurons. So that's, let's say we put our hand on top of or very close to a burning candle. A reflex is when we have that stimuli, that heat, very intense heat that's sent to our brains. But in this case, a reflex kind of skips the whole thinking process, so that you don't have to sit there and think, oh, this is hot, I should probably move my finger. Let's move my finger. No, what'll happen is you'll feel that sensation, and right away, without thinking, you immediately move your hand away. So that is how a reflex works. There are 31 pairs of spinal nerves, and they are named and numbered according to the closest vertebrae that they control. The brain receives incoming stimuli and interprets and processes the information and directs them to various sections to create a response. There are 12 pair of cranial nerves, which are numbered with Roman numerals connecting in the front of the brain. Neuritis is a type of disease that results from a fall or blow resulting in inflammation of the nerves. Multiple sclerosis, otherwise known as MS, usually occurs between the ages 20 and 40, and is a degenerative disease that destroys the myelin sheath of neurons in the CNS. So the myelin sheath, what that is, if you can think of like the way any typical wire is formed, we have the metal part of the wire, which you can think of the neurons. The myelin sheath would be the outer plastic covering of the wire. That is what protects the nerve inside, and also helps generate a faster response. So with multiple sclerosis, that myelin sheath degenerates and can cause a lot of degenerative muscular disorders. In that case, also impulses have a hard time getting through. The chronic nervous disease characterized by slow spreading tremors, muscular weakness, and a peculiar gait is called Parkinson's disease. And Bell's palsy is a sudden onset of facial paralysis. All right, another dental check. What types of procedures require the dental assistant to have knowledge of the nervous system? Who would like to answer that? So the type of procedure.
I have it highlighted.
I'm sorry?
I think I have it highlighted here in the book. I think I have it highlighted here in my book.
All right, what do you got?
It says importance to the dental assistant. It reads, dental assistants must know the nerves in the face and oral cavity to effectively assist the dentist during the administration of anesthesia, as well as many types of surgical procedures. So I believe that's why we would need to know about the nervous system.
Yes. So anytime we're administering anesthesia, we need to know where those nerves are. And even if we're not the ones that's actually doing the injecting of the anesthesia, a lot of times we're the ones placing the topical anesthetic. So we need to know where to put that based on where those nerves are. Also with different surgical procedures. So we have a main mandibular nerve that runs down this side of our jaw. And that single nerve is what gives us sensation and control of this whole part of our jaw. So when we're taking out wisdom teeth, for example, we need to know where that wisdom tooth is in relation to that main nerve. Because if we nick that nerve during surgery, it can cause that patient to have permanent paralysis or permanent numbness in that side or that whole part of their jaw. All right, good job. So functions of the endocrine system. When we talk about the endocrine system, it's a system that controls and communicates with the nervous system. The only difference is it's a little slower. When we talk about the nervous system, it's more of an electrical quick response. With endocrine system, there's also, it also helps to communicate with the rest of the body, but it's a little bit slower because it deals with chemicals being absorbed. So it reacts slower, but it's a little longer lasting. So the endocrine system functions to control growth, to protect from stress, stimulate sexual drive, regulates calcium and water balance, and produces insulin, which aids in the transport of glucose. So again, functions of the endocrine system include controlling growth, protecting from stress, controls the development of sex characteristics, regulates the use of calcium, as well as the water balance, and produces insulin. So insulin is just another hormone. So the hormones control internal environments of the body from a cellular to an organ level. And the endocrine system is made up of glands, which are grouped according to structure and interrelated functions throughout the body. The glands produce secretions called hormones, which empty directly into the bloodstream and circulate throughout the body. So hormones can be thought of as thermostats because they help to kind of keep that body in homeostasis, which again is making sure that our bodies are set at that 98.6 degrees as much as possible, even when we're working out. Certain hormones help to produce sweat to start. And so our body starts to perspire, that cools our body down. On the flip side, if we're shivering or we're very cold, there's hormones that make our muscles start to quiver and shiver. That extra movement will create heat that will bring our body back to that homeostatic 98.6 degree temperature level. So some dental concerns related to the reproductive system. So the main function of the male and female reproductive system are the creation of new life, as we know, and protections of these systems should be provided during certain procedures. So this is when we use lead aprons when we're taking x-rays. This is why we use adequate ventilation when we're using nitrous oxide sedation. So in both sexes, primary and accessory reproductive organs must be protected. Again, lead aprons should be used when exposing radiographs, and adequate ventilation during oxide sedation. So whenever you administer nitrous oxide, there is something called a scavenger. And the scavenger is basically a system that connects with the high volume suction. And it's that scavenging system. So when the patient breathes out through their nose, instead of letting that air with all of the nitrous oxide in it get into the room, it'll actually suck it right into the or the high volume suction so that nobody else in the room gets exposed. All right, so talking about the glands of the endocrine system, the pituitary gland is a master gland in the brain that releases hormones that affect how other glands work. The pituitary is in the middle of the brainstem, and it controls a lot of things. The thyroid increases the metabolic rate, and the parathyroid regulates the level of calcium. These things are found in our necks. So this is why we have the thyroid column. It's a very specialized type of endocrine gland, and it's susceptible to damage from X-rays. So we have to protect the thyroid. The adrenal releases the flight or response type of hormone. It can also increase blood pressure and heart rate, and also aids in metabolism. The pancreas produces hormones such as insulin and glucagon that are used to digest our food and get the necessary nutrients into our cells. And the testes are responsible for the male sexual development. The ovaries are responsible for the development of female sexual characteristics. Some diseases and conditions include diabetes mellitus. This is when the pancreas produces an insufficient amount of insulin. Hypothyroidism is a result of a underactive thyroid, and hyperthyroidism occurs when the thyroid is overactive. Pregnancy is a condition. I don't know why they group pregnancy and diseases and conditions, but it is a condition that we need to be aware of. The circulatory system maintains a balance between the intercellular and extracellular fluids, a continuous supply of oxygen, nutrients, hormones, and antibodies throughout the body, and are transported throughout the body while waste and carbon dioxides are removed. The heart is a triangular shaped muscle about the size of a closed fist, or the size of your closed fist, that works to pump or circulate blood throughout the body. There are three layers that cover the heart. The pericardium is the outer layer, and it's composed of a double-walled sac. The myocardium is a tough muscular wall, and the endocardium is the lining on the inside of the heart. So there's a wall that divides the heart into left and right halves. And each half has an upper and lower chamber. So there are essentially four divisions in the heart. The upper chambers are called the atria, are sometimes called the auricles, and the lower chambers are called the ventricles. And remember, both the atria and the ventricle have both a left and right chambers. Heart valves. With heart valves, we have tricuspid valves. These are the valves that kind of control the blood flow that divides the upper and lower parts of the heart. The mitral, or excuse me, or the pulmonary valves supply blood into and out of the chambers that supply blood to the lungs. The mitral valves are also known as bicuspid valves. And then we have aortic valves. And in this diagram here, it kind of gives you an idea of where all of these valves are, and they all have their own separate functions. The vessels carrying oxygenated blood to the heart, or excuse me, from the heart to the capillaries are called arteries. And in this diagram, you can see the arteries are anything that you see in red, or the blood vessels that supply oxygenated blood from the heart to the rest of the body. The walls of the arteries are composed of 3 layers to withstand pressure, because it's a very sort of known as your high pressure heart valve. Arteries range in size from the aorta, which is the largest cavity, to the arterioles, which is the smallest arteries. Veins are also composed of 3 layers, but are much thinner and less muscular than the arteries. The veins are usually carry oxygen poor blood. And blood carrying waste and carbon dioxide is transported from the capillaries and back to the heart via veins. Capillaries connect the veins and arteries, transport oxygen and nutrients to the blood, and remove waste and carbon dioxide. So the blood serves as a number of purposes. First, it transports nutrients, weights, and gas, as well as hormones throughout the body. The body fluids are regulated, and pH and body temperatures are also regulated by blood. And blood protects the body from pathogens, such as pathogens and blood loss after injury. The average person has about 4 to 6 liters of blood circulating throughout their body. The liquid portion of the blood is called the plasma, and it is made of about 91% water. It carries nutrients, hormones, and wastes. And the solid part of the blood is called corpuscles. And there are 3 types of corpuscles. Erythrocytes are red blood cells and contain hemoglobin, which is the protein that allows, it's the protein that carries oxygen. And the 5 types of leukocytes which are the white blood cells, protect the body from diseases. And thrombocytes are platelets that are like fragments of cells, and they are required to form blood clots, which help to stop bleeding in case you have some type of injury that causes bleeding. The 5 types of blood are A, AB, B, O, and ABO. Pulmonary circulation is the circulation of blood throughout the heart to the lungs and back to the heart. Systemic circulation carries the blood from the aorta to the small blood vessels and back to the heart. So pulmonary circulation is just back and forth from the heart to the lungs. Systemic circulation is everything else. Bacterial endocarditis is a type of circulatory system disease. Hemophilia is a disorder in which the blood fails to clot. That's when, for whatever reason, the blood isn't producing enough thrombocytes. Leukemia is a malignant progressive disease of the blood forming organs. So it's known as cancer in the blood. All right, another dental check. Why must a dental assistant be alert to cardiovascular emergencies in the dental office? So why, if you have a patient that you're seeing, why do we have to care about any heart emergencies?
Maybe like strokes or heart attacks.
You don't want to have anybody have any type of stroke or heart attack in that chair, right?
Right.
So a lot of times when people come into the office, they are stressed. It's just a very stressful place to be, let's be honest. There are much funner places than a dental office where patients would rather be. So a person that has some type of cardiovascular disorder like high blood pressure or some other type of heart disease is at an increased risk for a cardiovascular emergency. So if they're, this is why whenever the patients come in, anytime we see a patient, even if we just saw them a week ago, we still want to take their blood pressure when they come in because we don't want to cause additional stress. And if we find that their heart or their blood pressure is already high, any additional stress can cause them to have a cardiovascular emergency, which is not what we want in the dental office. Well, good job. All right, so talking about the digestive system, there are 3 functions of the digestive system. One is digestion, get the food through, absorption, because we want to absorb all of the nutrients, and elimination, because we want to get rid of things that we don't need. So the alimentary canal is the tube from the mouth to the tube from the mouth all the way to the anus, and includes the pharynx, the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, the duodenum, and the large intestine are all parts of that main alimentary canal. So that talking about the structures of the digestive system. Accessory organs include teeth, the tongue, salivary glands, liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas. These are all accessory digestive organs. And destruction of the surface is what we call, destruction of the tooth surface is what we call tooth decay. And it's usually caused, almost always caused by the bacteria that eats away the tooth structure. Bacteria eat the foods that are left on our teeth, and the byproduct that the bacteria create are acids that eat away at the tooth structure and cause tooth decay. And inflammation and deterioration of the periodontium is called periodontal disease. Bulimia is an eating disorder in which an individual vomits after consuming large amounts of food. And hepatitis is an inflammation of the liver that's caused by the 3 hepatitis viruses. So we're talking about hepatitis A, B, and C. The respiratory system supplies the body with oxygen through inhalation and eliminates carbon dioxide through exhaustion. So not exhaustion where, oh, I'm exhausted, exhaustion where breathing out. Air is inhaled through the nose and the mouth and brought into the lungs where it is absorbed into the bloodstream and carried out to all the body cells. And of course, exhaling the waste product, carbon dioxide. So talking about the structures of the respiratory system, this supplies the body with oxygen through inhalation and eliminates carbon dioxide through exhalation. Air is inhaled through the nose and the mouth and brought into the lungs where it is absorbed into the bloodstream and carried through all parts, through all the body's cells. Some respiratory system diseases include asthma, tuberculosis, lung cancer. The common cold is a respiratory disease. Pneumonia is when we have an infection in the lungs. And bronchitis is when we have an inflammation in the lungs, usually in the bronchial tubes. Tuberculosis, if we weren't sure what that is, it's just a highly contagious disease of the respiratory system. And a lot of times it produces people with tuberculosis cough up blood just because there's damage that's going on inside the lungs. So another dental check. The use of what in the dental office may be contraindicated in a patient with a respiratory disease. So if a patient comes in with a cold or they have some type of asthma or some type of respiratory disease, what procedure do we not want to do with them?
I feel like any procedure.
Right. Well, yeah, that would make sense, right? If they can't breathe, then we probably shouldn't be seeing them. But more importantly, if they have some type of respiratory disease, especially with the nose,
Not
one
gonna
thing,
be any anesthetics on them, right?
we can use anesthetics with them. If they have some type of like asthma or something like that, we can still work on them. But one thing that we wouldn't want to do is use nitrous oxide with them.
Yeah, like anything to put them out, huh?
Yeah, because the way you put the mask on is just on the nose, so they have to be able to breathe in and out of the nose. So if they have some type of condition, like especially a cold, right, you wouldn't want them to try to breathe through the nose because they probably couldn't anyway. And our goal is to not suffocate our patients. So no nitrous oxide if your patient has any type of respiratory diseases. All right, good job. So the lymphatic system is a network of vessels that drains and filters the tissue fluids that surrounds the cells. So we can think of sort of like a cell filter or a cell cleaner is what our lymphatic system is. Structures of the lymphatic system include the lymph vessels, lymph nodes. The spleen is another structure, including the thymus gland. And tonsils are also a lymphatic structure. The tissue fluid is called, the lymph is basically what the tissue, what the fluid is called in the lymph system. It's a clear fluid that transport the lymphatic capillaries. Lymph nodes are located in groups along the lymphatic vessels, and they filter blood and manufacture antibodies. The spleen is the largest lymph organ. It removes bacteria, including foreign bodies, old red blood cells, and acts as a storage for blood. The thymus is located under the sternum and is important in the development of the immune system. Tonsils guard against bacteria entering the body through the digestive and respiratory tracts. So the immune system protects and defends the body from pathogens, foreign materials, debris, and damaged cells. Non-specific immunity refers to the body's defense against harmful agents, and specific immunity acts against selected agents. So what that means is when we're born, we have non-specific immunity that kind of develops to keep basically all our most known harmful things from invading our bodies. Specific immunities are the immunity that we build up when we come into contact with certain diseases. So specific immunity would be like if we caught a cold, our body would develop a specific immunity against that specific type of cold, so we would never be able to get that type of cold again. Or let's say we're talking about chicken pox. When somebody gets chicken pox, they develop a specific immunity to the antigen that's in chicken pox, so that you can never really get chicken pox again. Okay, this is how vaccines work is they act on the specific immunity in our bodies. Again, non-specific refers to things that protect our body from anything, and this includes like our skin. Our skin is part of our non-specific immunity because it basically protects our body from any and all things, or any and all pathogens, I should say. All right, so talking about lymphatic and immune system diseases, tonsillitis is a chronic infection of the tonsil tissue. Hodgkin disease is a malignant disorder that causes the lymph nodes to enlarge. A hypersensitivity to a certain substance is called an allergy. And immune deficiency disease is a failure in some part of the immune system. So some functions of the integumentary system includes protection from foreign invaders, temperature regulation, metabolic regulation, prevention of water loss, and the making or synthesis of vitamin D. So what types of things make up the integumentary system? Also it produces melatonin, produces also keratinocytes. We'll go over that, what all that means in a second. Storage of water, fat, and vitamin D, and it also helps with wound healing, but it helps with wound healing. So the parts of the body that the integumentary system is composed of are the skin, and the skin has 3 different layers. There's the epidermis, which is the outer layer that we can see, feel, and touch. The dermis is the inside layer of the skin. And the subcutaneous layer is the bottom layer of the skin, or the most internal layer of skin. It's also called the hypodermis. The other organs of our integumentary system includes nails and hair. So all of these things act to protect our bodies, to regulate temperature, to regulate our metabolism, prevent water loss. Our skin can also make vitamin D, produces melatonin, produces keratinocytes, and it stores water, fat, vitamin D. All right, skin conditions that we can sometimes get, or some people can sometimes get, are albinism, which is a lack of melanin, or lost my train of thought, which is the pigment that creates pigment, which is a chemical that creates pigment in our skin. So somebody with albinism we refer to as albino people. Those are people with no pigment in their skins, and that it's that pigment that protects their bodies from UV radiation. So people with albinism have to be really careful when they go out into the sun, wear lots of sunscreen, and sometimes still they can get sunburns very easily. Cyanosis is another skin condition that is when the body or the skin turns blue when there's not enough oxygen in the body or the blood. An erythema, erythema. I'll have to look at what erythema is. I'm not really too sure on the top of my head, but it's in your book. A hematoma is just a bruise. Jaundice is a yellowish color of the skin. It's usually when we have hepatic conditions, which means the liver is starting to malfunction. It'll create a yellowish color of the skin that's referred to as jaundice. And paler is just when we have our red blood cells that aren't carrying enough oxygen, and it causes our skin to become pale or white. Carcinoma is a type of skin cancer. Malignant melanoma, the same. Dermatitis is the irritation of the skin. Acne is when we have pimples that develop. Cellulitis is when we have sort of like, I'm not sure, it's almost like patches of fat or water that kind of builds up. And then warts is actual a viral condition that creates these wart-like lesions that nobody likes to talk about. Another dental check. So what abnormalities related to the integumentary system should the dental assistant take note of and report to the dentist? Can anybody answer this?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. What abnormalities related to the integumentary system, so this is the hair, skin, and nails, should the dental assistant take note and report to the dentist?
Your skin.
Is it your skin?
Yeah, so
What
what
said
thing,
cellulitis?
what condition? So if a patient comes in and something's wrong with their skin, their hair, or their nails, what types of things are we looking for, or what would raise alarms with us?
Maybe color
Oh, the
Discoloration?
jaundice.
Yeah, jaundice is another one. Right. So that would be any type of discoloration, whether it's especially like cyanosis or jaundice, right? These are kind of like red flags to us. Any type of lesions or sores, we would want to take note, not only because sometimes it can be contagious, but just because people have a cold sore or some type of lesion on their mouth, it can be painful if we're in there messing around with it. So we have to be careful. So we would want to let the doctor know, hey, so-and-so has a cold sore on their lip, or they had a cut on their lip, try to be careful. And then rashes, the same reason. So good, very good. All right, that was it. So let me just go back over here. Did anybody have any questions with that at all?
No.
All right, so I want to go over what we have today. So for today, there is that the matching planes and orientation quiz. We also have there's a couple of videos, the Amoeba Sisters video, body systems, and then also the assignment that has to go with that. We have a MindTap quiz and a MindTap's planes and terminology that's due tonight. For next week, we want to study the spelling terms for week 5. That test is going to be on the 21st. Also began the review study guide for this class. It should be found in the distance learning folder. That's not due until January 11th, but you want to start working on that now, especially as you kind of go through the chapters. Just fill that in as you go. For one, that'll give you more time to study kind of as you go. And then that'll also give you time to ask questions if you need to. Also, don't forget to work on your portfolio projects. That's due on January 12th, but time goes by quickly and you don't want to have to do too much over the break. So we want to get working on that if you have time this weekend. All right, any questions with any of that or on anything that's due at all?
Yeah, you said you're studying for spelling week 5.
Yeah.
Do you have the vocabulary due?
Good question. Yeah. So I will put that in there. I'll do this. So that the 21st is what, Monday, correct?
Yeah.
So I'm going to move that probably to the next day because you're right. I do want to have a vocabulary assignment first so that that'll give you something to study off of. So good catch. Thank you. So yeah, just work on that. I'll have that. Does anybody not know where to find the week 5 spelling list?
quick refresher might not be a bad thing for me.
Okay, it should be in the content folder. Let me just double check to make sure it's there. It's just a sequence 1, which it may even be way back in Den 100. If that's the case, I'll make sure I make a copy of it in this class's course content.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? All right. I'm going to take that as a no. So it's 6:30. It's already been an hour. Time flies, right? So thanks for everybody that came. Let me just do a quick 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks like everybody is here. So great. Thanks for listening, everybody. And I hope you all have a great weekend. And I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
You
You
too. Bye.
too.
Bye.
Bye.